Alright, what's good everyone? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks for the Z Fold 6 camera and also how you can maximize your cameras on this phone. So let's get into it. So the first quick and easy tip that you might not know about is on a lot of Android phones, especially Samsung phones, you can double tap your power button to start your camera app. So double tap power button and boom, I'm in the camera app real quick. The second tip is that you have a lot of different options for, camera modes on this phone. So what you can do is go to more right here. You'll see additional modes. What I like to do is I like to go to the plus, and now you can drag the different camera modes that you might use more often to the bottom menu right here. So that's always there by default. And then you can also organize them in whatever order you want. So for example, let's say you mainly use photo and video mode together. So then you have them side by side. So basically the way that I have mine set up is that I'll put pro photography mode next to the regular photo mode, and then the pro video mode right next to the video mode. So that way I can, if I'm doing something, like if I'm filming video, then sometimes I'll go back and forth between pro video and regular video just for like different types of shots. And the same thing with photography. I might go back and forth depending on what kind of shots I want. And then I use portrait occasionally for like videos. I don't really use portrait that much, but just to test out the cameras, I have it here. Night mode, in the normal photo mode, it turns on automatically, so you don't necessarily need night mode. Basically, this tip is that you can organize your camera layout so that you can have specific camera modes always available and in the order that you want. The next tip is to go into your settings in the camera app and then make sure that you have camera assistant installed, and you're just gonna go here and turn on this right here. This is the 2x zoom shortcut. You just want to turn that on so that way when you're in your camera app, now you have 2x zoom right here by default and it just stays there. This phone doesn't have a native 2x zoom camera lens, so it goes 1, and then a couple more quality of life things that I would turn on in the camera settings are, 1, I would turn off auto FPS in video. I feel like I don't really like when the camera is constantly shifting between, different FPS, raising or lowering the FPS, because it kind of makes the video look choppy at times. It will definitely affect the brightness of the video as well. So personally, I rather just leave it off. So whatever I set it to, if I'm recording at 60 FPS, I'd rather the camera just keep recording at that. I'll turn on track and autofocus. So if I select something in the shot, then I want the camera to keep staying on focus and on that. And then grid lines is very important to me, so I'll turn that on as well. Grid lines basically just helps you line up your shots, your videos, your photos, and all that stuff. And then I also will go to shooting methods and then turn on voice commands so that you could say smile, cheese, capture, or shoot to take a picture, or you can record videos by saying record video. So that's also nice to control your phone without using your hands. You can also show your palm as well, which is decent, so I turn that on as well. And then settings to keep is very important. So I turn on camera mode, high picture resolutions, and portrait zoom. Settings to keep basically just means that whenever you change a setting in the camera app, these specific settings will stay the same no matter if you leave the app or not. If this is turned off, then that means the camera mode will reset every single time. So for example, I turn it off, so I'm on pro photography. If I close the camera app, then start it again, it's gonna go back to the default photography. So I like to just turn on camera mode setting, and so that way I can just jump back into what I was doing before. The last quality of life thing I'll point out is camera timeout. So sometimes I might have my phone on the tripod or something, and I'm not necessarily using the camera at the moment, but I want the camera app open so I can see the viewfinder, especially with the outer screen. I'll show you that later on. Then I'll turn on camera timeout to 10 minutes so it doesn't just turn off the phone, because I'm still doing something. I'm just not using the phone at the moment. All right, so now let's go through the basics of the camera app. So obviously at the bottom, you got your zoom levels. So this switches between the different lenses and the digital crop. So 0.6x is going to be your ultra wide camera. And then 1x is going to be the main wide camera. Then 2x is still the main wide camera. It's just cropping in on the sensor or the image. And then 3x is the zoom camera. You can go through the different zoom lengths with the different shortcuts. But what I like to do for a little bit more precision is you can touch the normal zoom length selector and then drag your fingers. So now you can kind of adjust it in increments, so it's more precise for what you want to do. Like sometimes you might not always want to be at 10x, but so maybe you go to like 8x or 7.5x or whatever is necessary to get the shot that you want. This button right here, you can switch the camera, and you can also switch the camera by double tapping the power button while you're in the app as well. Now at the top, you got your settings. Obviously, you got your flash, so you can turn flash on to auto or just on always or off always. Then you got a timer, you got 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Then you have your different aspect ratios. Aspect ratio is basically the size of the image or the screen. So for example, this is 3:4. If you rotate it like this, it becomes 4:3 because now it's in landscape. But then if you go to 9x16, 9x16 is more of like a traditional camera. So actual camera will shoot in 16:9 or 9x16 if you're in vertical. And what this is basically doing is cropping in on the sensor. So it doesn't actually change the sensor size or the native aspect ratio for this camera. So if you look at the image right here, I'll take one in 9x16, then I'll go 3x4. And basically, if you look at it, so you're zooming in and a lot of the detail, a lot of the things on the sides of the image are being cut out because you're going closer to the subject versus this where you see there's so much more that is caught in the image. So 16:9 or 9x16, you're basically shooting that mode for aesthetic purposes, but I would suggest that you just shoot in the normal 3x4 mode because it captures the most detail because it's the native aspect ratio. And then literally just crop the image. So let's say I want to take a picture of this flower, but I want it to be in 9x16. I can go to edit. And then from here, there's a little box that says free. You can tap that and then press 9x16, automatically crops. And now you have the freedom of choosing. Now you have the freedom of choosing what you want the framing to look like. So now I can save that like that and boom. It's going to be 9x16, but a little bit higher quality than just shooting it straight out of the camera because that's not the native aspect ratio. And then you got the megapixel mode. So by default at the top right here, you got 12 megapixels. And then if you tap it, it goes to 50 megapixels. And that only works for the main camera because the main camera is a 50 megapixel shooter. The rest of them are not 50 megapixels. Basically shooting in 50 megapixels means you're gonna capture a higher quality and more detailed image, but the phone's processing is gonna be a little bit different because of how big the file size will be and all the information that 50 megapixels is capturing versus 12. So if I take a 50 megapixel shot right here, the phone's gonna take a little bit longer to actually process that image versus 12 megapixel shot, it processes it way faster. And it also does a little bit more tuned and optimized, I think. So basically the only reason you would want to shoot 50 megapixels if you are, let's say, taking a picture that you plan on blowing up and putting as a wallpaper on your computer or, you know, printing it out, then you would want to shoot with the most megapixels possible to retain that information and that detail in the image. But also, if you're going to shoot in 50 megapixels, then you want to make sure that you hold the camera as steady as possible or just put it on a tripod because the camera takes a little bit longer to process the image and take the shot. When you're shooting at higher megapixel modes, in 50 megapixels, you also don't have as many features, so you can do digital zooms. Digital zoom is basically just zooming in on the image like you would like if you're editing it. Basically editing the image before you actually take the picture. Optical zoom, or like just a normal zoom, is when it's literally what the camera is capable of doing. So in 50 megapixels, because the main sensor is the only one that has 50 megapixels, obviously you cannot optically zoom. You can't use the zoom camera. You have to digitally crop on the image that you're shooting. But if we go back to 12, then you have this right here. So this is motion photo. If you've had an iPhone, then you probably are familiar with this. But basically, you take an image and then it captures, you know, moments before and after the image. And then when you tap on the image or view a motion photo, then it shows you a little video of what happened before and after you took the shot. Personally, I like to turn it off because I don't like that feature, really. And it's not something that I use, but if you use that, then cool, keep it on. Then you got your filters. So, of course, there's like generic filters like warm, cool, light. And you can also adjust the strength of the filter, which is pretty cool. And, you know, some other creative ones that they have here. But one thing that is cool is that you can actually create your own filters. So you can download filters from the Galaxy Store, which is a really cool thing because you can do different things based on different looks that might be out there. And then you can also create your own filter using images. So let's say I go to this image right here of my daughter at a birthday party and I want to use that look and that style. The phone will try to create a filter based on this image. And I think you can actually select different parts of the image to focus on like the aesthetic you're going for. So press done. This is the reference area, and now I'm getting those kind of colors. So manually creating a different kind of filter, and I could just use that now. And you can also name the filter too before you save it. Leave it on, and then you can just quickly take pictures in a certain style and look. So this is with the filter that I just created. That is the basic photo mode of the camera app. So now let's go to video. So video is the same stuff, kind of. You got your different zoom levels, and you can do the same thing by sliding. And then you also have auto framing. So if you put your phone on a tripod it's a Z Fold, so if you open it up and then you have the camera right here and your phone is propped up, you can have it set to auto frame. So if you're walking around and moving around, then the phone will follow you as the subject, and that's pretty cool. And you can do auto frame up to 4K 30. You can only do 30 FPS in auto frame, unfortunately, but it's still a pretty cool feature to have. At the top, you have your flash. Then you also have your action mode. You have super steady mode, which basically, it works really hard to use software to stabilize the image to make it look very smooth and not shaky when you're walking or moving the camera around. And you can do this up to 4K 60, which is pretty cool. When you're using super steady, you gotta make sure you have a lot of light because, like I said, it's cropping in on the image and it's doing a lot of software stuff to stabilize the image. Even though stabilization by default is pretty good, but when you're using that mode, just make sure you have a lot of light because it's less detail. Then you got your different aspect ratios. So you can shoot in 1:1, which is a square basically, or you can shoot in full, which is like the whole screen. It's kind of like a movie aspect ratio right here. And then you got the default 9:16. So video is normally shot in 16:9. This is what all our TVs and our monitors, they're all that aspect ratio. So when you watch a video, it takes up the whole screen, and that is why 16:9 is the default for video mode. And it is a slight crop on the sensor. But yeah, in video mode, you can go up to 8K. Personally, I don't use 8K because it's unnecessary. Nobody has an 8K monitor, so you can't actually reap the benefits of that. However, 4K, you can see the benefits on a lower quality display. You can technically with 8K as well, but I feel like anything higher than 4K is kind of like diminishing returns and like there's not much value in it. So up to 4K 60 is probably where you want to be. And then you, of course, you got 1080p at full HD and then 720 at HD 30. I personally wouldn't use this unless you really want to save your storage, but honestly, full HD is good enough for saving your storage. Then you got your filters, just like I showed before. Another quality of life change that I would choose is going to advanced video options and changing it from HEVC to H.264, because H.264 is just more compatible than H.265, which is this one. And also in terms of video editing, this is a lot easier than this one right here. Even though this will save you some storage on your phone, like the files will be smaller, H.264 is just better in general for more use cases. But real quick, before I end the video, in order to get good pictures and videos from your phone and just cameras in general, you need to understand lighting and how lighting interacts with your different camera settings and the camera itself. So let's say the ideal settings for me right now are like 1 second shutter speed and 50 ISO. But if I take that image, it's going to be overexposed. The image is going to be too bright. So ND filters are these things, like I said earlier. So one option you have to work around that light sensitivity with the ideal settings that you want is using ND filters. So ND filters allow you to control the light intake. So if I turn it, then the filter will become more thick. This filter applies a layer above the camera with its own glass and limits the amount of light coming in. So as you can see, the image in the preview is a lot darker than it was before. If I take this shot, the overall image is going to be darker. So I can now use the ideal camera settings that I wanted to use before without overexposing the image and making it look crazy. So this is particularly useful when you're taking photos and videos outside and you don't want to overexpose everything, but you want to have certain settings. So like, let's say I'm taking pictures of a marathon and people are running and stuff, they're moving, then I would want to have a higher shutter speed so that I can capture the motion without motion blur, sharp images. So 1/125 at 100 ISO, generally everything's going to look nice, but then if the sun is out, the subjects are going to look nice, but the background's going to be blown out. It's not going to look that good. But when you use a ND filter, that allows you to have those ideal settings to capture your subject sharply without overexposing the back and making it super bright like you saw in these images right here where it's overexposed. So hopefully that all makes sense and that gives you an idea of how to work around your camera and just get better images and shots. When it comes to taking photos and videos, there's not really any one solution that works for everything. You got to figure out your own style and also what you're trying to accomplish and also what would be best for your subject and the situation, the lighting situation, and just everything that is going to be in the image. And that just comes with like trial and error, practicing, taking different shots, messing around with the camera settings. Generally, I think the Z Fold 6 cameras are actually good cameras. They're just not as good as like the best of the best phones in terms of like point and shoot photography. But I think overall, this is a really good camera system that is versatile and can do a lot. And there's so many different things that I didn't even show in this video, like using your main cameras while, taking a selfie and having the viewfinder here. Like I'll talk about that in another video, but yeah, one of the most versatile camera systems on the market right now if you learn how to use it. So that's all for this video. We are out. Peace.